It says it's live. View on Facebook. And YouTube. Is that one? Okay, just give folks a little bit more time to join.
No problem.
We're a couple minutes early, so that YouTube's good, and Facebook. Just so I can see the comments, should anyone ask. Okay, I can see people starting to join now. Just going to wait a few more minutes, give it to a couple of minutes past before we start.
No problem.
Okay, I can see people starting to join. Just going to give it one more minute and then we will kick off.
Okay.
Okay, welcome everyone. I can see we've got a few people on we've got Facebook, we've got YouTube, and we should be coming to you live. I'm joined by Craig from Fox. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's just a very quick introduction. My name's Will Eccles. I'm a passionate solar enthusiast. Started the Fox group a number of years ago after having an installation myself. Since then, like everyone with solar, grown battery capacity, grown the solar array, got into electric cars and everything in between. This is the first ever live Q&A with Fox. We're very, very grateful for you to join us, Craig, this evening, and thank you everyone online for tuning in as well. I've asked some prior questions that we've organised and I'll be putting to Craig, but feel free to ask any questions in the comment section of the streaming platform that you're using, whether that's YouTube or Facebook. I'll try to get to those and read them out towards the end. Craig, tell us about yourself.
I'm Craig. I work here at FoxESS in the UK. We've got our main service base here in Coventry. So my position here is UK Service Director. So I oversee the after sales department for the UK, and in addition to that, I oversee the national training program as well for installers. Having recently launched our Elite Installer Scheme, which has been rolling now for a few months. So and as you're aware, because I think some of you would have seen, I am trying to interact as much as possible within the group. It's not always possible to sort of monitor it sort of throughout the day, but where I can, I'll chip in and I'll offer my input. But obviously, this session obviously is the place really for me to try and answer as many questions you've got as possible.
Awesome. No, really appreciate you joining us in your evening to walk us through and talk to us through about the updates that Fox have, as well as answer some of the community's questions. Tell us a little bit about what we see in the background there, Craig.
So I'm sat in our training room essentially. So we have our service centre here. So downstairs we have our call centre, we have our first line technical support, and here we have our training area. So this is where the installers will come for their training. We accommodate around sort of 12 to 14 people at a time in this room. You can't see it all, but we basically have a full suite of products here on demo. We've got some Energy Cube stacks behind me. We've got a Myra stack. And obviously, as you can probably see, we've got a selection of inverters behind me. Still work in progress. We've moved in here a few months ago. It still needs some work and some T's crossed and I's dotted in terms of getting this where we want it to be. But yeah, it's proved to be very useful actually to have this facility.
Awesome. That is great. So we'll jump straight into it. We've asked the community for their questions to ask you directly. Collated all of those, and I'll walk you through. So I think what's on everyone's mind right now is around the Fox Cloud. We've had completely unscheduled a few outages over the weekend. Some comments as well about the data logger going offline, not specifically over the weekend, but in previous, the sort of reliability of the cloud. What's the update? What's going on there?
So we had some server issues over the weekend. These affected our service based in the Far East, hosted by Alibaba. So we have servers around the world. We have some in Europe using AWS, and we have some in the Far East using the Alibaba platform. There was a series of issues. What we didn't have was a blanket outage. So it was kind of a bit of a we were a bit slow to realise, and what tended to happen was during the course of last night and then into this morning, we started to get sort of reports coming in from end users and from some of our installation partners as well. The exact nature of the issues I've not been privy to. All I know is that there's been work going on throughout the day to put that right. I understand that any issues that affected sort of time of use scheduling had now resolved. So those people whose time of use settings weren't being applied, or they couldn't apply new settings, that shouldn't be the case anymore. And there was also I think some of the other issues reported. I think everything is now resolved with the exception of firmware updates. So at the moment, there's a pause on firmware updates. They will be enabled again from tomorrow. I don't have full details, but I can only give you a sort of summary. An apology. I think it was mentioned in the group this morning by a few people that, why didn't we alert people to this earlier? That's been noted and fed back. I think one of the things we're working on is having better communication via the app itself. If we're having connectivity issues or there's an outage, we should really be reporting this immediately through the app, so people, don't think it's unique to them and aware that there's more of a network issue rather than it being specific to them. We naturally then received quite a few emails over the weekend and a flurry of phone calls at 9 o'clock this morning, which we had to address. That's for us to put right and to make sure those lines of communication are better. From my perspective, obviously, I'm the only one that really is feeding into the UK user group. So, I didn't really become aware of the issues until around 6 a.m. this morning, which was when I fired off a number of, and I wasn't the only one. There were some of my colleagues in other countries as well that obviously were alerting head office and the IT department to these issues. So I can't give you a detailed breakdown of the nature of the problems and why it occurred. That may be shared with me tomorrow. I think the priority today has been getting getting things back up and running, and just to give people some reassurance, there is a significant investment going in to our sort of the IT side of the business, and making sure we have greater reliability. The servers that they should have, we have backup servers, we have mirrored servers, and I think there's an investigation going on as to why this issue wasn't sort of handled in that way. But yeah, I don't have all the details, Will, but just a general sort of update, an apology really for the way this panned out. I mean, it didn't happen. It didn't help that it happened at a weekend. That's never the idea. We obviously do work all weekend, but there's obviously human resource is less than it is through the week. But I think it was all hands to the pump this morning, and hopefully we've resolved all the issues, and we'll be back to normal in the morning in terms of firmware upgrades.
Sure, no, appreciate that update, and I'm excited about the option of potentially having app-based notifications. Fox have done it previously. I remember last year, there were a lot of questions around, battery temperature and the battery performance, starting to derate due to temperatures, and there were messages started appearing in the app, and that settled a lot of people down. Oh, it's normal. They do this, and it had some best practices and some advice in that notification as well. So a way of notifying sort of service affecting issues. You can never predict an outage. It wasn't a planned maintenance window at all. It was an issue that came and it was responded to. So we're looking at ways of speeding up that communication, reassuring people. I did release a short YouTube video today as well, just walking people through how to set charge windows on the inverter screen itself. If push comes to shove, there's an issue, you have access to the physical hardware. Whilst you can't control it through the app, the inverter is still working. I think a lot of people worry that without the cloud access, that their inverter sort of goes to sleep. No, it still continues fully working. Obviously, you can't adjust those time windows through the app if the app is down, but there is a physical interface on the inverter, should there be a prolonged issue. I think a lot of people just are nervous about cloud connectivity. However, it is the way that all inverter manufacturers are going now. They've all got a dependency on the internet, on the cloud, to view reporting and change settings. But yeah, I know you understand how important it is that the cloud is available, and speaking personally, seeing the numbers change and seeing your live production, your real time energy consumption is quite addicting to watch. So it's understandable that people are noticing it and picking it up on, on the weekend. They're seeing, oh, it's sunny. Should I put the washing on? Should I do this or that? And to not be able to see it after being able to see it is we all go through withdrawal, I think.
Well, I'm also aware that within this community, people are very aware of what's happening and pay close attention. So, and that naturally, I think within this user community that you have here, Will, that there is obviously going to be, and it's a nice early alert system for us as well, because people jump on it, and obviously, and also the help that's given by yourself and others within the group actually is very helpful to us as a manufacturer. I mean, we will try and engage where we can and get more involved in providing feedback and information. But so one of the things we want to do, certainly here in the UK, is support your community, because it is actually very helpful to us.
That's great to hear. On to the next question. We've had a few people in different ways, so it might not be one-to-one with what you submitted, but I'm trying to group messages because there's a fair amount of duplication. But fair few people talking about weather forecasting, temperature-related data, in order so that the Fox system could intelligently figure out, well, if tomorrow is going to be particularly poor, I should do more charging, or if tomorrow is going to be sunny, I should do less charging, so that it sort of matches consumption with that cheap rate tariff that a lot of people benefit from. Any thoughts on that, Greg?
There is something being worked on now. I would say, I mean, this is not imminent by any stretch, but there is certainly on the long-term roadmap. There would be some sort of intelligent sort of AI that underpins everything that it will learn, and it will. Well, the ultimate aim is to do exactly what you've said, is to have some sort of intelligent system that responds to customers' usage, their typical load profiles, that can see weather forecasting and can intelligently sort of set charge and discharge accordingly. It's quite complex because you've got so many variables there. It's not just the weather. There's obviously people's usage. There's obviously people's tariffs. A vast bulk of our user base would be on Octopus at the moment. They seem to be leading the way, but not everybody is. So it's something we're working on, but it won't be sort of. It's not an imminent update or feature, but certainly at some point, I would hope towards the end of next year, we'll have something in beta. Is what I'm told. I think I've lost the audio.
Oh, there we go. Yep. It's my fault. Speaking of imminent updates, Craig, tell us about the new mobile app, the V2. We've got questions such as, can we get a sneak peek of it? When will it be live? Hopefully going to put on screen now your screen. Can't quite see it. Would you mind sharing your screen again, Craig?
Give me 1 second. You have to give me a second there, Will, because it was happening and then it suddenly disappeared.
No worries. Maybe just to describe what it is for now, and we can bring it up in a moment.
Actually,
there we go.
Yeah. First of all, the data which underpins this demo is a bit flaky. Okay, so a lot of this is not based on real data. So what I've done is we have a sort of a work in progress beta version of the app, which I have access to. So I've grabbed some screenshots, but some of the data, you look at it and it doesn't make a huge amount of sense. So please ignore that. It's purely right now, obviously, just to give you an overview of what to expect and some screenshots. So the app is a complete a change to the landing page on the current app, and I think people maybe thought that was the new app. That was simply a cosmetic change to the homepage. The new app V2 timescales, it keeps shifting. We are looking at December, okay, early December for the release. Okay, but don't hold me to that. That there may be a bit of movement on that. There's obviously ongoing discussions, and it's very much work in progress still. You'll see here, I've given you an insight into the homepage and what you expect to see. This will change depending on what you have installed. So, for example, if I scroll down, you'll see this particular example here it's based on a H3 hybrid with an EV. Also, you'll see that there's a heat pump there as well. We are launching a new heat pump soon. It's early next year, I think. So I've got information I can share on that if anybody's interested. You'll see a couple of significant changes here: self-sufficiency and self-consumption. So that those data isn't currently displayed on the app. It will be. That might be useful to some. Total income, total revenue, there will be the option to remove that. We're conscious of the fact that actually that's becoming less useful. There was a time when people were just basically, it was all centered around the feed-in tariff, and it was a very simple calculation, wasn't it? Your solar PV production multiplied by your FIT would give you an approximate sort of idea of what you were earning from the system in terms of FIT. Now there's so many variables that it's very difficult to pin that down to a single figure. So we may hide that, or at least we're going to give the option for people to hide that if they don't want to see it. So the way that it will work is that there'll be far fewer key presses. The user interface will be a lot more sort of intuitive, and the flow will be better. Okay, so you'll be able to you can see down here. This is, by the way, taken from the Android app. The iOS app will look a little bit different, but not massively. But I use Android, so these are screenshots from my own phone. You can see that you can then drill down into the devices. So there's an option down here, and then you will see inverter and battery in this case. Okay, so this is the battery screen. You can see there we've got a temperature, which you may find useful to see that the average battery temperature. And then obviously down here we'll see again. I talked at the beginning about some of the data doesn't make sense. That doesn't really make sense. It's you'll see a proper sort of charge discharge curve on the battery under normal working conditions. This is just showing you a sort of a continuous 100% or thereabouts SOC. You can also view the inverter data. Okay, so by clicking inverter on this tab at the top, you would see your inverter. It tells you what work mode it's in. You can then obviously scroll down and see some of the performance graphs. Let's see if we can find that. Okay, so there's an example here, a couple of examples. You can see that solar PV generation now is separate from it's recorded separately. I know that's been something that people have mentioned a lot, the fact that we're sort of showing output power, but that obviously can be a combination of solar PV, of PV generated energy, and also anything that's been brought up from the grid, because it combines PV output with battery discharge. So that's been sorted. And again, some of the metrics that we display on the home screen are given are covered here as well in a bit more detail. I am moving around a bit, just trying to give everybody an idea.
That looks really impressive. We did have one question just come in that I think is relevant. In terms of the real-time updates, so at the moment it's 5-minute sort of polls. Is there a change to the strategy or the frequency of how data will reach the app?
There is a plan to give the option to reduce that. So within the settings, you'll have the option to set that from 60 seconds to 600. So that brings it down to a minute. Now that I can't give you an exact idea of when that's going to be available, but that is being worked on. So it will be reduced to 1 minute is the plan. I can't see us going below that, not short term anyway. I think there's a few things we have to be conscious of there. It's obviously load on the server. We also have to be conscious that some people are using 4G data loggers, which have Vodafone data plans, which we don't want to use too much bandwidth on those. We have to consider also that this is a global platform, so it's used not just in the UK but globally. There's certain parts of the world, in the Indian subcontinent, parts of South Africa, where everybody's running on GPRS, and again, so we have to be conscious that those, that they have a data plan attached to them, and we can't use too much bandwidth. So I know that for many in this community, that real-time data is quite important. Many people use Home Assistant, and there's obviously the third-party apps that people use. But from our perspective, in terms of the main FoxESS app, it will be reduced to a minute for data polling.
Sure. No, thanks for that.
Yeah. So again, I'm just sort of skipping through this a little bit. EV charger. Okay, so you'll have access into your EV charger status and also the ability to adjust settings. I can give you a little bit more background on the EV charger now while we're discussing it. there's no secret to this. The EV charger, the FoxESS EV charger, is not going to be released in the UK under the FoxESS brand. Okay, it will be distributed by Project EV, okay, under the Apex brand. Okay, so it will be our EV charger, made by ourselves, but it will be branded differently. But it will sort of be part of our DNA, our ecosystem, and there will be something else which is on the horizon, is a new EMS, energy management system, likely to be launched in Q1 2024. And our inverters, our EV chargers, and also our heat pump will all connect into that energy management system. So you have that sort of that intelligent, intuitive sort of control that's all part of the same ecosystem. So that's coming next year.
Brilliant. We have another question about the app. Currently on the sort of facelifted version, the graphic doesn't seem to accommodate having, say, an AC charger with a separate solar inverter. You can use CT2 to monitor the generation of a second solar only inverter. Is there plans to incorporate that as well?
Yes, there is. Well, what I'm led to believe is that won't be on the initial rollout. That's still being worked on, but we accept that's quite an important feature. So it will be, yes, it will be included. Hopefully, it will be included with the initial rollout, but if not, it will follow on shortly after.
Brilliant. Any other key points for the new app you wanted to call out, Craig?
So yeah, I mean, I think one thing to mention is this won't really impact on many people here because they already have products installed. But through this service option here, this will ultimately tie into our ticketing system and also our warranty database as well. So whereas at the moment people have to register warranties at the website at a warranty registration page, they'll be able to do it directly through the app. So that's something else that's being worked on. A knowledge base as well. So there'll be a knowledge base linked to the app, and like I said, there'll be contact details. It should geolocate as well. So if depending on where you are in the world, if you select contact us, it will geolocate and give you the relevant local details for that. Other than that, trying to think of the main points. I think we've covered most of them.
Yeah, no, it looks really nice, especially the way you can flick into more detail. This is a remarkable notch up in terms of detail, seeing the battery temperature, seeing the generation in more granular details. We've got a question about let me just bring it up, around showing specifically the solar generation. The current app sort of calls it yield, a combination of battery discharge and generation from solar. Is it better broken out now in terms of what really is solar generation?
Yeah. So if you look at the screen, you look at the third one along from the left, you'll see that solar produced is recorded separately. So you'll be able to see that, because we recognise that's one of the biggest emissions on the current app is the ability just to see what your solar PV production is in isolation. So that will all be available through the new app. That's one of the key updates.
Brilliant. And there's been a lot of well, it was a big topic last year, especially as we went into the cooler months. But the batteries, these I understand are sort of LFP based cells, lithium ion phosphate based cells. They're very stable, but their performance is directly correlated to temperature. And we've seen some folks have performance issues and charge and discharge derating happening below certain temperatures. Any information on that? And also, your comments on people boxing them in, insulating them in, anything that you've noticed or read on the community that you just want to talk about?
Yep, sure. So what I'm going to do, just before I move on from the app, one thing I forgot to mention is you'll see on one of the screens there that there's a data option. So one of the things that's been fed back to us is, and I am aware of the fact that a lot of people in this community have agent accounts. We know that. But one of the things we wanted to make sure happened was that end users had the ability to download their data as a data dump in a CSV format. Now that's something that will mainly be done through the web browser version. Incidentally, the web browser version won't be the relaunch of the web browser version will be several weeks after the app. Okay, so what you'll see initially is the app updated, and then the Fox Cloud won't really change much for several weeks, but then it will. And lots of the new features will be available through the Fox Cloud via the web browser. But one of the options that we are going to open up to end users is the ability to export their data, which is quite an important feature, which has obviously not been possible up until now. I'm just going to stop sharing that. I'm going to share another screen, if that's okay, Will.
Absolutely.
You asked the question about temperature.
There was a question as well, sorry, Craig, about the solar generation now being broken out. The question's around efficiency. Is it solar produced net of losses? Is that overhead of the inverter and the losses involved? Can you see that in the new app in terms of when you're comparing numbers?
I'm led to believe yes. I think so if you've got a grid-tied inverter, an F-series inverter, then obviously it'd be very easy to see that data. But obviously, where it becomes a bit more complex is where you've got output from the inverter that combines PV with battery output as well. I'm led to believe, and again, like I said at the beginning, this is still very work in progress. And in fact, I think it was last week in a conversation I had with the team developing the app, I made that very point. I think it's difficult through the app itself because you've got a small screen. It's quite difficult anyway to really drill down into the graphs. But I think one of the plans for the Fox Cloud web browser version is that people will be able to see that and make a determination about their losses, their DC to AC losses, which obviously is quite important for some people. Yeah, so that's understood, and that's something that's certainly been requested.
Because most of depending on your setup at home, you've got the solar being generated feeding your immediate house loads. Any surplus is going to the battery. When that's full, goes out to the grid. But in the evenings, you're then taking that stored energy and then converting it back into AC to then power the loads. And although the round trip efficiencies are very, very high, you look at them and they are, industry leading, and you can tell that they're very efficient because the inverters aren't pumping out a ton of heat, right? So where there's heat, there's loss. Yeah. These inverters, most of them don't even have fans. So that's an indication to just how efficient they are.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I mean, absolutely. I mean, that is the case. We do make that point routinely in terms of sort of the data that we see, that the inverter and the battery efficiencies are industry leading. From the end user point of view, it's obviously one of the things that we need to try and improve is the way that we present that data and make it more intuitive and more easy to understand. So that is going to happen. I'm not saying for 1 minute that when we launch this in a few weeks, it's going to be perfect. It will be an ongoing project. There will be, I'm sure, there will be a number of updates post its launch, as you can imagine. So we'll keep engaging with people on this, and we'll take feedback. And all I can do here is obviously collate that information and feed it back. One of the things that's important to stress is, I obviously represent the UK. I'm feeding into our R&D team all the time, but so are other people in my position all over the world. And if you look at the development to-do list, it's quite long. And we're constantly feeding in new requests and new requirements. So, for example, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, shortly about Octopus. There's similar requests being made by my colleagues across Europe for similar integrations that are needed in those countries. So things don't always happen as quickly as I'd like or that our customers would like. But rest assured, these things are pretty much anything that people can think of and that they're asking about today. It's already, we already know about it, and we already know that there is a demand for it. It's just a case of the timescales and the workload for our R&D team.
It's great having you champion, especially the UK corner in those priorities. I see you're sharing your screen now again with looks like a sort of matrix around temperatures.
Yeah, so I think you've made the point. The chemistry is LFP, so it is what it is. That the chemistry is widely used in the industry, and the laws of physics are the same for everybody. We don't hide the fact that temperatures, cold temperatures, are not good. I mean, to be avoided. And you can see from this is a matrix of charge rates. Discharge rates look slightly different because we can discharge down to -10, albeit below 0 down to -10 is a bit of a trickle. On charge rates, we can't charge below 0. But again, at very low temperatures, not much is happening. You'll see there that sort of green region, that's a sort of sweet spot. Now those figures are in amps. Okay, so in fact the inverters can't do 50 amps. The batteries could theoretically take a 50 amp charge, but they're limited by the inverter. The moment you start getting down to 15 degrees and below, you can see there's a fall away. That translates to a lower rate of charge. The calculation that you would do on that is the charge rate in amps multiplied by the battery voltage. So if you've got, say, 3 batteries, 150 volts, you can do that calculation yourself. So that comes, but the conversation we have with installers all the time is about battery location. It's obvious the ideal location for batteries is in a temperature controlled environment, internal. A utility room, a kitchen, a cupboard under the stairs where there's room. But we appreciate that's not possible for everybody. Some people have loft installations, others have garage installations. Some people have them outside. But what we're trying to do is make people aware that, it is going to derate in the cold. It may be the case that you have, a battery at 50% SOC. The sun's shining. It's a nice sunny winter's day. Your PV is doing really well, and people will see export to the grid, and that's really frustrating for people. That it's not going into the battery, but the truth is it's obviously just capped at the charge. The charge rate's capped, and there's nothing we can do about that. Nothing I'm saying here doesn't also apply to every other manufacturer in this sector that uses LFP, and they all do. So it is what it is. The question then comes on to what can you do about it? We don't officially sanction any particular solution, but we're quite flexible on this. Nothing in direct contact with the battery, so no thermal blankets or anything like that. But we've seen some quite creative enclosures that customers have built. The rule is, as long as there's some clearance, there's nothing in direct contact with the battery, that the enclosure is vented, and crucially that it can be opened if needed, we're okay with that. That's no problem.
No, awesome. No, it's really, really interesting to see, because a lot of us have speculated or felt the impact of slightly cooler weather and cooler conditions on the battery. And like you say, it's inevitable that folks only have room in their garage, in their in their lean-to, in their loft. And there was a period of time a few years ago where every install seemed to be in the loft because the installers were putting the solar inverter in the loft, and now they viewed the hybrid as just being the same, and then put some batteries on a bit of reinforced timber underneath. There's probably a lot of those out there. And if we've got an insulated ceiling, but your loft is effectively at ambient, and in the winter, especially in the UK, we're lucky we only get down to single figure negative for most of the country. But that loft space over days of cold weather will cool, and then your batteries start cooling, and then you start to see the effects of that. So, but with chemistry, it's always a trade-off. So you've got a very stable chemistry that's not prone to sort of thermal runaway and all the other things you see in the newspapers. You get tons and tons of cycles out of them, very, very high levels of cycles, and you can charge them to 100% without feeling bad for the battery. They're very happy to do full range discharging. Is that right, Craig?
Exactly right. So you've nailed it there. There's a trade-off with LFP. The benefits you've stated, stability, and but the issue is temperature, and there's nothing we can do to get around that. But certainly, in terms of cycle life, in terms of battery stability, there's obviously lots of benefits to the chemistry that we use. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those questions that routinely comes up, and we're trying to be very open and honest about it, so that people's expectations, realistic in terms of what's going to be delivered if your battery's sitting in a sort of -2. It's just not going to do a great deal. The other thing to note about temperature is that the cell temperature and these derating measures are based on cell temperature. It always runs a few degrees below ambient. So we do get people say, well, I've just taken the temperature in my loft and it's 18 degrees, but actually the cell temperature might be 13, 14 degrees. So that's an important point.
Yeah, and it's typically the worst cell temperature. So if you've got a
Yes.
big stack of HV 2600s, the one that's closest to the floor is probably going to be cooler, right?
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah, and it works off that it takes those cell temperatures and it goes from the lowest. So yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
Next on the list of questions, there's a lot of questions around firmware, so let's get stuck into these. So as we know, firmwares are currently only controlled by the installers or the agent accounts or yourselves at Fox. Questions around, could firmware updates be automated? What's the future potential for firmware updates?
The roadmap is that at some point in the next 6 to 12 months, through the app, there will be the option for one-click upgrades to firmware. That's very, very new. I've only got that confirmed today, and I got that confirmation ahead of this session, really, because it's been discussed for a while, but I've had to make the case quite strongly for this feature. But it is going to happen. The issue we have at the moment, and lots of people that are looking in now will have agent accounts and the ability to upgrade firmware themselves. Whether that should be the case or not, we're aware that it happens, and some people are quite capable of doing that without any fuss. The issue with the current format for updating firmware is that there can be mistakes, and sometimes if you're updating very old firmware to the latest, you have to do phased upgrades, which is why at the moment in the current way that we do firmware upgrades, we're not going to roll that out to everybody. When we give the ability to do firmware upgrades, it will be through the app, and it will be a one-click upgrade, so the app does all the work, and there could be no sort of scope for mistakes or errors. So yes, I can confirm that is on the roadmap, but I can't give a timescale. It's going to be next year for sure.
And in terms of firmware updates, a lot of people have read about the new features such as the force discharge capability on the H1. What's the typical path for firmware upgrades? What does an end user do?
In terms of just clarify that question, Will. Sorry.
In terms of the sequence, so if you're a user, you've got a solar system installed, you've read on the Facebook group that there's newer versions that support newer functionality. How should you go about getting a firmware update done on your inverter?
In the first instance, we'd recommend that they go to their installer. Now, listen, we appreciate that there's installers and there's installers. Okay, some of them offer really, really good after sales, engage with their customers, are easy to contact, and would quite happily take a request for a firmware upgrade and carry that out themselves without any fuss. Equally, there's installers A that aren't there anymore, or B have installed the system and basically are not very responsive beyond that point. So we're happy to take requests directly from end users for firmware upgrades. We obviously have, or maybe we'll touch on this later, a process for how we would like people to raise issues. Okay, and it does involve, in the first instance, going through their installer. I suppose the best analogy would be, if you've got a problem with your Ford, you're going to go to your dealership. You're not going to go straight to the manufacturer. We rely on that being that sort of that layer in between ourselves and the end user. We have nearly a million end users now globally, so we have to be a bit careful about what we open up to end users. What we do say is, given that we don't currently offer an easy way of upgrading firmware, then we need to make it easy for end users to contact us and request that. So what we'd ask that they do is, if they can't get it through their installer, is just to email us. So the UK email address is service.uk@fox-ess.com. I think that's been shared in the group. Happily, we'll take emails through that email address, and all the customer needs to do is specify their serial number and specify that they would like a firmware upgrade, and we'll do that for them.
Brilliant.
We prefer that they did it that way than open a ticket for firmware upgrades. Just do it by email. It's easier for us.
Sure, absolutely. And just to call out what their situation is it because their installers, no longer around or not giving them the support? We were really clear on what equipment they've got, what firmware they're looking for, and
Yeah.
what the situation is with their current provider installer, so that you guys can action it accordingly, right?
Absolutely. I think with firmware upgrades specifically, given that, for example, the recent change, we're just happy to take that email and just action that. In terms of any other after sales issues, any service issues, if it's the case that your installer is no longer trading, or that you've tried to contact them and they're just not being responsive, please specify that in the email that you send. State in the email that you've tried your installer, you're not getting a response, or that they've gone out of business, and we will pick that up and we will deal with that inquiry directly. What might happen if you don't do that is one of our first line team might come back and say, look, are you able to log this initially with your installer? And of course, at that point, you can't, because they're not responsive. So if you let us know in that initial email, it just help us bypass that and jump straight on it for you.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Okay, a fair number of questions came in around release notes or sort of change notes. So we see that great progress in the firmware versions that we see. Obviously, it's under constant development. You're constantly releasing new software, new firmware, and the cloud is being updated, as well as new products, which we'll talk about in a bit. But is there any plans to include release notes or an indication of what that change may include, instead of the sort of reverse engineering approach that a few of us have taken?
Yes. So alongside the ability to upgrade firmware easily, release notes will be made available. I'll be honest, they won't be granular. They'll be a summary. So they'll just give a summary. I suppose one of the issues we've got is that more often than not, you don't need to upgrade your firmware. And there may be very slight updates to firmware. It may be to do with data handling, whatever it might be. And they're quite minor updates. And I think some people just like to be on the very latest firmware. It's just something that they would rather be on the latest firmware. So they will obviously, if they become aware of the firmware update, they will want it. So we've got to manage this in such a way that it doesn't create lots of work for the office, but also that customers know. And if we provided release notes, it might help us in some respects, because customers would not necessarily feel as though they needed to be on that latest firmware level. So yes, again, as part of the conversation I had today about the one-click install through the app, we will be making release notes available. They'll probably be summarized. It won't be granular, like I said, but it will be made available for sure.
Awesome. And we've noticed a few people have commented it's difficult to know what all the versions are and mean, partially because each inverter model has a different numbering system. Is there any rhyme or reason behind that one?
Yeah, because just clarify that one in terms of the numbering of.
So, for example, H1's latest master firmware is 1.70, I believe, or 1.71. Yeah. If you look at a H3 or an all-in-one, or any of the other master firmware versions for any of those other inverters, it will be completely different. It might still be in the 113 type number. Is there any thoughts to unify, if there's a change that incorporates a set of features, that it's the same number for all inverters, just to help customers, especially those that have multiple models under one roof, right? If you've got an F series for your solar generation and your an AC1 for your battery storage, is that an idea?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and I think that would be helpful for sure. I'm not sure it's something that will happen. I think that these products do develop independently, and there are updates that apply to some and not others, and I think the numbering just get out of sync. I think what will help is, once we have this information via the app, if a customer knows they're on the latest firmware version, that will help, because I think the problem at the moment is they don't know. And in other words, if you go into your device, on the app, you have the latest software. I think that would be helpful, because I think it's not always clear. But I've made a note of that, because that was something that I've got to raise with with R&D to see if that's something we can look at. I'm not sure it will happen, though. I think that you are going to get this sort of this difference in the sequencing and the number sequencing for the updates. They will not stay in sync completely.
But like you say, if the app is giving you that confidence that you're on the latest version with the best features available, then the numbering might just be a side effect of the not knowing piece, I think.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Next question is around three-phase systems. Although not many properties in the UK have three-phase, especially residential, unless you're in commercial, but it's very common across Europe and other countries. But it's been noted that even on the latest version of the firmware, the three-phase, such as the H3, doesn't yet have forced discharge scheduling. Is that something that's about to come out?
Yes, it's on the list to do. 6 weeks is the timescale I was given for the forced discharge option to be made available on the H3.
Perfect. That will assume also include any of the three-phase, like the all-in-one three-phase and things like that. They're all based on similar firmwares, aren't they?
Yes, so it will be universal across the range. H3 Pro, I don't know. I imagine it will be, but H3 Pro isn't been officially launched yet anyway. But in terms of the H3, the all-in-one, yes, it will be. It will be across the range, across the three-phase ranges.
Cool. And a very popular request that I've grouped into kind of one question around getting any insight into the future of integrations, Octopus. I know that you're innovating in this space from our previous conversation, but are you able to share any details about what you're up to?
I'll give you a bit of an insight. Yeah. So obviously those customers on Octopus Flux are now okay, given the updates recently, given that Flux, the time window is pretty much fixed. So we obviously have the forced discharge option now available. Obviously that took some time to get. One of the issues we had there, and I think somebody from Germany actually posted a question, was that there's certain parts of the world that's not actually allowed. Battery to grid discharge is actually illegal. So we had to. It took us a while to develop it, probably longer than it should have done. But also we had to make sure it was locked down for the UK as well. On top of that, then, so the other main tariff that gets mentioned is Agile. There's some work going on at the moment. So I had a meeting last week with the development team, and we thrashed out how we imagine the Agile integration will look from a Fox perspective, given that we're basically tapping into the Octopus API. Though it's not 100% nailed down, but it will work in this way. Okay, there'll be two options, we think. There'll be something called we haven't really named these, something like trigger price mode. Okay, so what will happen is, if you're on Octopus, you'll get the option to enable this in your settings, and then it will ask you choose between two modes. Trigger price mode is a very simple way of integrating with Agile. You'll simply set a target price. Okay, so let's say that target price is 15 pence. Any time periods, any time slots within the sort of 48 published time periods that fall below that trigger price, it will charge your batteries. For those that are using the export and Agile as well, there'll be the reverse of that. There'll be a target price where you force export. Not likely to be many people using that because the export payments under Agile aren't amazing, but still that option will be there. That will be option one. The other option will be based on time periods. So what it will do is it will give you an option to select a number. We imagine that number will be between 2 and 10. If you select, say, 6, what we will do is we will look at the next day rates from Octopus, and it will look for the 6 cheapest time periods within that 24-hour period. And what it will do is it will charge the battery during those 6 periods. So if you select the number 6, for example, and this will largely depend on how much storage you've got, what it means, it guarantees that for 3 hours, you'll be charging your batteries at the cheapest available rates via Octopus for that day. And something similar for export as well. Beyond that, it's difficult to know how we in terms of the initial integration anyway. We may tweak it. There may be feedback from customers that may say, well, maybe try this. It'll get smarter. It'll get more intuitive. But on initial rollout, we imagine offering those 2 options to customers. Is that clear? Is that understood in terms of how I've described it? Because I was probably waffling a bit there.
No, yeah, that's really clear. And I've noticed that a few people in the comments have mentioned that on the very latest H1 firmware, there's actually the option for more scheduled tasks as well. So before it was limited to a certain number, that's now increased as well. So for those that want to have more timed events, that's been really good. There was a comment from Tony about the impact on the battery warranty around forced discharging affecting its energy throughput, how that affects warranties, and have you got a view on that?
Well, it doesn't affect warranty in so much that it's a throughput based warranty anyway. Obviously, the harder you work the battery, the more throughput and therefore it is going to impact on the warranty to a degree. The warranty needs to be considered to be a two-tier warranty anyway. In one sense, it's a product warranty. So if your product fails, if your battery goes dead within the 10-year period, then it's a product failure, therefore it's covered under warranty. If you detect that the battery is not performing to its stated performance level, let's say year 6, you can demonstrate that you're not getting the throughput you would need it, then obviously you might come to us make a warranty claim. It's at that point that we would analyze the throughput and obviously just check to see if it falls within the output that we specify in a warranty document, which I can't recite from memory, but it is included in the warranty document. So your product warranty is unaffected, but your performance warranty obviously will be impacted by the amount of charge cycles you put through that battery in that time frame.
So people should take account for that when you're trying to work out your any potential gains from forced discharge in the battery. Know that you're putting wear on the battery, just like a courier would look at the mileage on their van, right? The longer you drive it, the faster you're going to get through. Potentially components are going to wear out, but your the product warranty is there should the battery fail, but your performance warranty is being used if you use the battery in harder examples. And one thing that comes up a fair amount is people sort of wanting to baby the battery, but the battery's there to be used. You typically maximize your return on investment by using the battery, and you shouldn't need to tweak and play around too much with charge rates and things like that, because it is a self-contained system. As we saw earlier with the temperature matrix, it will look after itself and try to keep itself within operational boundaries. You kind of can't hurt it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way to look at it. And I know people crunch numbers and they look at Octopus, for example, and they look at Flux and they look at the rates they get for discharge, and then they make a calculation that it's beneficial. But then are they factoring in the efficiency losses, and then are they factoring in the wear and tear on the battery and the impact on that? Consider it to be a long-term investment. So you've got to factor those things in when making those calculations. I mean, there are certainly cases when export rates get very high that it's worth doing. If export rates are very high, you can make that case, but not everybody factors those things in, as you've mentioned. You've got to consider those things.
Sure. We've got five minutes left. Just want to get through a few more questions. I made Craig. We've got questions around. It's no secret that the community likes. We've got some advanced users there. We've got some advanced plugins for Home Assistant. We like to access the inverter data in real time, locally, etc. Are there plans potentially to add the new sort of scheduling forced discharge type parameters to the Modbus interface so they could be programmed over Modbus?
Yes, it is possible. It will happen, but it's just timeframes. That's all. It's gone onto the list as something that is desirable. So we will allow that. I mean, look. I think it's one area where we come at this from a UK perspective, and we maybe look at things differently to they do in the Far East, and it was in terms of making public the Modbus registers and that sort of thing. It was something that we weren't very forthcoming with for a while, and I think there was a bit of reverse engineering going on, and the people basically working things out themselves. And I'd like us to be more open on that. Just what we do say is, and I don't know if this policy will remain in place at the moment officially, we'll only share those Modbus registers under NDA. We're happy to make that NDA with end users. We're not restricting it only to sort of developers or large installers. If people have something and they're really keen to do it, we'll share it, but it has to be under NDA. I'm pushing for that to be removed. I don't see why we'd need that, but it's at the moment that's how it is.
That's good to hear. A few questions over the last week about, especially as people have been upgrading firmwares, etc., noticing that the LAN port seems to be being phased out. Do you have a comment on that?
Yes, that is the case. Support has been withdrawn. There is a change, and also I think on the generation 2 of the H1, which is coming at end of the year, so there'll be a new version of the H1 coming out. Major changes with that, just to give you a heads up, are cosmetic. It looks a bit different. It has a higher input max current. Obviously, so conscious of the fact that sort of panels are changing and we need to adjust, accordingly. Also, there will be the option to parallel the H1 version 2 in the same way that you can with the H3 and the K series. There also will be an internal relay in that inverter for bonding earth to neutral in the EPS mode. The key changes, just to give you an overview of that product, it's going to be available at the end of the year. Where were we actually? Sorry, I went off on a tangent there. We were talking about...
And I suspect you brought up the Gen 2 because it doesn't have a LAN port.
That's it, yes. However, early next year, we're going to have a new dongle, and that will be a Wi-Fi and a LAN dongle in one.
Oh, nice.
That will be standard. At what point that becomes standard obviously depends on build date. Obviously, the stock in the system that needs to be sold, and obviously distributors have products on the shelf. But at some point next year, that dongle will become standard, and we'll obviously make it available as an optional sort of aftermarket item as well for those that want to use it. I did raise the specific question about support for that. Well, give me 1 second. I just want to go to.
But hearing that the H1 Gen 2 supports parallel is very interesting, because a lot of folks have got to the point, myself included, where I've had to have multiple inverters to support multiple battery stacks, and a bit of Frankenstein wiredry makes it all work, and careful CT placement. But there's nothing better than properly supported 2 or more inverters with a connection between them, so they are both outputting, and you've doubled your capacity.
Yeah.
For those lucky enough to have 3-phase, the larger Pro version will support multiple battery stacks on one inverter. You did a brief walkthrough on the Birmingham NEC day, didn't you?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So I can give you a bit of, if you want me to, I can give you a bit of an insight into some of the products coming next year if people are interested. Just on the new dongle with the LAN port, it's possible that because TCP/IP can be supported through the dongle rather than directly into the LAN port that's currently on the inverter, which is going to be removed. I can't 100% confirm that, but that has been suggested as a possibility.
But for those wanting real-time data, your options are to use the extra pins on the COM port for Modbus.
Exactly, yeah.
And consume it that way. And it's, it is 2 pins, but if you break anything whilst pulling that plug out, you kind of are doing it yourself. Fox won't be replacing plugs for user error, but we all know that risk. But the advantage, if you're an advanced user building custom dashboards like you've seen on the community, it's pretty neat, pretty cool, and not a lot of other inverter manufacturers support it as easily as Fox do. So a lot of people want to keep that, want to continue to use it, but also understand that the average user having a better app experience that updates faster and contains more information is everyone's wish list right now, looking at all the questions. So I'm super excited to see all of that stuff starting to come through.
Yeah, we're pretty relaxed about the third-party applications and the Home Assistant. We obviously don't support it directly. You've made that point for us, but people are using it and doing so successful. On the H3 Pro, just to give you heads up on that. So there will be double stack support for the 25 kilowatt and above. And we've had it confirmed this week that the maximum number of batteries can go to 9 per stack. So in theory, on the H3 Pro, you can get above 80 kilowatt hours on a single inverter. So 18 batteries. So 18 of the 4.8 cubes would go into one inverter. So for those that are interested, that's a bit of a departure. We're up in the maximum number of batteries.
That's pretty interesting, especially those properties with high. I mean, 25 kilowatt is that's a very large MCB in itself for a residential. So it's probably more commercial or very large places. But I think we're seeing a trend on a lot of people looking at their battery capacity, especially as heat pumps are becoming more commonplace, powered by electric, and people are looking at their stack and wanting to either cover completely or mostly cover their daytime heat pump usage by cheap rate overnight, and trying to do that sort of peak shaving, peak offsetting type stuff. So that's really interesting. And like you said, the ECS, the cubes going right up to, was it 33 kilowatt now in a full stack, something like that?
Yeah. So 33 on the H1, the KH, the H3. And then obviously the H3 Pro has that sort of high limit, so you can go up to 9 batteries, and you can double that up. And of course, the H3 Pro you can install in parallel as well. So you're maxing at near just under 900 kilowatt hours on that system, theoretically.
But if you're one of those people on the community that's sitting saying, I need more batteries, I need dual inverters, I want to look at a garage full of batteries, your options right now are K series with parallel mode. You can go up to 10 inverters, so 10 times 33, I mean, that's over 330 kilowatt hours. I think the DNO would be asking what you're up to at that point. Or the Gen 2 H1. Is that also 10 inverter capacity for parallel?
I believe so, yes. Yeah, certainly the data sheet says that much, and I've asked that question and had that confirmed. I'm always a little bit reticent when there's a new product coming to say too much, but I've not seen it physically. We've got some coming in, but yes, it's the same. It's 10. It's just on EPS mode. You're topping out 4 in parallel if you're using the EPS.
Right. And we had this conversation the other day, because a lot of other inverter manufacturers, when you combine inverters in parallel mode, you scale your storage, but you don't scale your throughput in terms of what the inverter can output. With Fox, if you add 2 5 kilowatt H1s or the Gen 2s, you get 10 kilowatts worth of continuous current out of those batteries, because they'll discharge the batteries together to provide the house load, right?
That's right, yes.
Yeah. Whereas if you're looking at something like a Tesla Powerwall or other equivalent, the Alpha, all of those, when you run parallel mode, you don't double the inverter throughput with each of those additional. Whereas Fox, you get that true inverter. Sorry to I'm selling your own product here. It's a shame there's not a referral link, but yeah, because a lot of people will be thinking, it's getting colder, I want more batteries, I want to get ahead of an incoming price hike for grid price, especially as gas gets started to be phased out. A lot of people want to make investments, and investing in stacks of batteries a fair sum of cash. So what's the most intelligent way of scaling up capacity, especially in the UK, where we have fairly restrictive electrical standards, and finding installers with knowledge, being able to wire all this stuff up can sometimes be tricky, but it's all coming, and it's good to see the Fox products that are on your roadmap and currently, coming in the very near future, support all these extra features that people have had to work around, I suppose, in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Are there any other product updates you want to mention before we drop?
Microinverter coming out next year. So the M1 series will be a 2-panel microinverter. That's new. I haven't got a huge amount of information. I've got a sample sitting on the desk here, but we're being a little bit sort of hesitant in saying too much about that, just to give people an idea that it's coming. So 2-panel arrays, perfect, and it will be an M-phase kind of equivalent product. It was going into that market. That's where it's being pitched. We've got a new battery coming next year. Can't tell you too much. So the Energy Cube is here for the long term. It's not going to change. Hopefully we won't have any more versions of it either. That'd be nice. But there's a new battery coming, very early days. It will be a slimline wall-mounted high voltage battery. I believe it will be a size 5 kilowatt hours or 11 kilowatt hours, 2 options, and they will be, you can parallel those up. So it'll be a proper high voltage battery. So it won't be 50 volts in series. It will be a high voltage battery, which you can parallel. And I think you can have 4 of those. So that would be a shade over 40 kilowatt hours per inverter. Early days for that. I haven't got a huge amount of information. Got some images. It looks quite nice. But that's coming next year.
Awesome. No, it's really exciting. Especially you mentioned the heat pump and the whole energy management system as well.
Yeah, so that's actually something I wanted to mention. We're currently got some demo sites going in. So Fox is launching a new heat pump, or a series of heat pumps. They will be in the market early next year. There's a colleague of mine. I don't know if he was potentially going to join this session, but he's. If anybody's got any questions about that, they're welcome to email us, and we will forward that on to Bradley, who runs the heat pump team. And we've got some technical specs we can share, and obviously then we can keep people updated on some sort of mailing list as to when it's available. So that's definitely coming. It's not my area of expertise, so don't quiz me too much on it, but it is coming, and it's got obviously quite a significant departure for us. And then there's EMS as well. Again, that's early days for that, but obviously that brings everything together. Our EV charger will be on the market very soon under the Apex brand, APEX. That's going to be the FoxESS charger, so it'll be on the market very shortly through a partner, but that's essentially our product, so it will share the DNA of our other products, and we'll connect into the EMS that will be coming out in Q1 next year. So that, yeah, those are the main developments. I'm just trying to think of anything else that I can mention, but I think there's 1 or 2 things that are so early I don't really want to mention them.
Absolutely, we need some content for the next meet as well.
No, that's right. Yeah.
But no, that's really interesting to hear that Fox going down the heat pump route, because even the traditional sort of whole home energy type apps like the Tesla, where you've got the car, the batteries, the solar all in one app, you've got all of that already now with the car charger when that comes out. Now you're adding heat pumps, so you'll have one app for your entire home energy needs. You'll be able to compare all of those, and I assume they'll all be intelligent, so things will turn on and charge, or depending on the rates, etc.
Absolutely, yeah. Because the limitation at the moment, even of our current EV charger, is that obviously you've always got that sort of conflict with, people have got CT clamps everywhere at the moment, and trying to prevent your batteries dumping into the EV when you don't want them to. So obviously that needs to work intuitively and be smart, and we'll have a green mode. We'll obviously manage the energy properly, but for that you will need our EMS. So that'll be an aftermarket product. It will be backwards compatible with our range, and that should be available in the early part of next year.
Awesome. There's only one other question that I see coming in thick and fast, and that's, can we have more of these? I assume they mean the meeting, the update.
Of course, yeah. We'll obviously we'll make. I'll make myself available, and whenever you think it's worthwhile, when there's something worth talking about, I think possibly if we look for one early in the new year, because I think a lot of the things I've spoken about today will either be online by then or be very imminent, and so it will add more information, and I'm sure there'll be new questions as well that come up in the next few weeks. So absolutely, yeah, we can do this
absolutely
more regularly.
No, that's great. That sounds like a plan. So folks watching, keep your eyes peeled for an announcement in the new year for me collecting more questions. We'll format it in a similar way. Again, massive shout out to Craig. I appreciate him staying late in the office to get with us and answer our questions. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks, Will. Take care, everyone.